There are seasons in life where the heavens seem quiet. You pray, but there's no reply. You seek, yet it feels as though the door remains shut. You knock with weary hands, and the silence on the other side is deafening. You look around for signs, any signal that God is near, but all you hear is the sound of your own breath in the stillness. And in that stillness, doubt whispers, "Has God forgotten me? Has he turned away? Am I even on the right path but chosen one?" Let me tell you something sacred. The silence was never abandonment. It was a test. God didn't speak not because he wasn't listening, but because he was watching, carefully, intentionally. Not your performance in public, but your posture in private. Not your declarations of faith when surrounded by community, but your inner resolve when no one else stood beside you. His eyes were fixed on you, not in judgment, but in divine curiosity. Will they trust me when I say nothing? Will they follow when I give no map? Will they obey when there is no applause? This is how God tests his chosen ones. Not with loud trials, but with quiet ones, with battles that rage only in the heart, with decisions that seem minor but are massive in the spirit. And perhaps the most difficult test of all, the long wait, the delay that stretches you thin and tempts you to let go. But here's the mystery: you were passing that test the entire time, and you didn't even know it. While you were weeping in prayer, heaven was recording your tears, stinkus. While you were wondering if God still had a plan, angels were standing guard over your journey. While you kept choosing truth over comfort, righteousness over shortcuts, humility over recognition, God was watching. And more than watching, he was smiling. Because you were doing what many cannot, remaining faithful in silence. You see, most people don't recognize the test because it doesn't come dressed in trial. It comes dressed in normal. It comes when you're doing the dishes, showing patience with a spouse who doesn't understand. It comes in the quiet yes when your flesh screams no. It comes in tithing when your budget doesn't stretch. Forgiving when the apology never comes. Staying when leaving would feel easier. These moments don't look like testing. They look like life. And yet, in heaven, they resound louder than any sermon, echo louder than any shout of praise. These are the moments when your soul is weighed and your heart is proven. God isn't watching for perfection. He's watching for consistency, for endurance, for faithfulness that isn't loud but lasting. In 1 Samuel 16, when the prophet Samuel was sent to anoint a king, he looked at Eliab, strong, tall, impressive, and assumed, "Surely this is the one." But God stopped him and said, "Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Chosen one." That's what he's been doing with you, looking at the heart, weighing the things no one else sees. You may have felt forgotten, overlooked, like you were living a life that didn't count for much in the grand scheme. But in heaven, your quiet faith has been causing celebration. The very moments you thought were insignificant were thunderous in the spirit realm. Because in those moments you proved something powerful: you love God for who he is, not just for what he gives. You worshipped without music. You prayed without answers. You obeyed without reward. And that, beloved, is faith of the purest kind. The kind of faith God croons, the kind of faith he promotes, the kind of faith he trusts with greater things. Don't mistake the silence of God for the absence of God. His quietness was not neglect, it was observation. And what he saw in you moved his heart. Heaven doesn't grade you on how loud your praise was in the congregation, but how sincere it was when you were alone in the dark. He doesn't measure your value by the size of your platform, but by the depth of your obedience when no one was clapping. God's greatest tests are not public, they're personal, not for show, but for shaping. And you, chosen one, have been shaped, refined, not in front of a crowd, but in the secret place, in the hidden corners of your life where only God could see. And that is where kings and queens are forged. That is where warriors are born. You've walked through sainted and stayed faithful. You've walked through obscurity and stayed obedient, and in doing so, you have passed the silent test. You may not have realized it, but heaven did, and the silence is about to break. What's coming next isn't random, it's reward. What's opening next isn't by accident, it's appointment. What's flowing next isn't favor you earned, it's honor you were entrusted with. Because when God tests you quietly and you pass without realizing it, what follows is not just blessing, it's promotion. Not because you chased it, but because you were prepared for it in the fire of the unseen. And the God who saw you in secret is about to reward you openly. Faithfulness is not often forged in public moments of grandeur, but in the quiet decisions no one ever sees. The small yeses whispered when temptation knocks, the choice to keep going when quitting would be easier. These moments, small, silent, and unseen, are where eternity watches most closely. You, chosen one, and have made those choices again and again, not for recognition, not for reward, but because you love God. And in doing so, you've revealed something rare: integrity in the shadows. There were days you could have responded with bitterness, but you chose grace. There were nights you could have compromised, but you chose conviction. You turned the other cheek when insulted. You held your tongue when it burned to speak. You walked away from arguments you could have won, simply because peace meant more than pride. These things seem small in the world's eyes, but in the kingdom, they are monumental. They are acts of spiritual warfare, because every small decision for righteousness in secret is a rejection of the enemy's whispers. Every quiet act of self-control pushes back darkness. You may not see the ripple effect, but God does, and heaven records every moment with precision. The enemy thought you would fold. He thought you needed attention to stay faithful. He thought silence would weaken you. But he underestimated the depth of your devotion. He didn't realize you weren't serving God for applause, you were serving God out of love. He tried to break your spirit with loneliness, but all he did was expose your loyalty. It is easy to obey when the reward is clear. It is harder when obedience feels like sacrifice without promise. But you still chose God. That time you shut the computer screen before the temptation grew stronger. Heaven saw it. That moment you gave away your last coin. Trusting God would provide, heaven took note. The night you got on your knees and prayed, though your heart felt cold and distant, heaven listened. Each of these things seemed minor in the moment, but they were seeds, and God never forgets a seed sown in faith. Remember the widow Jesus saw in the temple. She gave 2 copper coins, almost invisible to the crowd. But to Jesus it was everything, because it wasn't about the amount, it was about the heart. That's what he sees in you, not the size of your actions, but the sincerity of your sacrifice. You have honored God with your small choices. You have proven your love without needing the spotlight. And now, chosen one, those small seeds are about to bloom. There's a mystery in the kingdom. God uses the smallest things to unlock the greatest blessings. A mustard seed of faith can move a mountain. A boy's lunch can feed thousands. A shepherd's sling can defeat a giant. And your small choices, they are becoming the foundation for a massive shift. You didn't wait for the crowd to cheer before you stood in obedience. You didn't need confirmation from man before you followed conviction from God. That kind of faith cannot be manufactured. It must be refined. And you, beloved, have been refined in the fire of obscurity. Let's be honest, it would have been easier to quit, easier to stop giving, easier to stop praying, Easier to let your guard down just once and indulge. But you didn't. Not because you had perfect strength, but because you had anchored love. You chose what was right, even when it cost you. And that cost, though invisible to man, is known deeply by heaven. There were moments your heart broke because no one noticed. You wondered, does anyone see how hard I'm trying? And while others slept, you wept. While others scrolled, you worshipped. While others gave up, you pressed on. And through it all, God was not distant. He was there watching, measuring, smiling. The world calls these things weakness. Heaven calls them strength. The world ignores the quiet ones. Heaven calls them faithful. In Zechariah 4:10 it says, "Do not despise these small beginnings. For the Lord rejoices to see the work begin." He rejoices, not when you finish in victory, but when you begin in obscurity. Not when you've conquered the mountain, but when you take the first step toward it. Not when you are applauded, but when you are simply faithful, and you have been faithful. This is not about perfection. It never was. This is about the pattern of your obedience. Not every day was flawless, not every moment was strong, but your heart kept turning back to God. Your feet kept walking the narrow road. And that is enough. So now, chosen one, know this truth: every small choice you made in the dark is about to be honored in the light. Every seed of sacrifice is about to break open with fruit. Every private prayer is about to become a public breakthrough. You didn't live righteously for nothing. You didn't resist temptation in vain. You didn't walk the narrow path for no reason. God has been keeping record, and the time of remembering has come. Perhaps one of the most beautiful and mysterious truths in the kingdom of God is this: you can pass a test you didn't even know you were taking. And that's exactly what happened to you. You weren't handed a study guide. No prophet came to declare. God is testing you now. There was no countdown timer, no dramatic build-up, just ordinary days, silent nights, and decisions that seemed small at the time. Yet in those moments, heaven was measuring. Your reactions were weighed, your motives examined, your faith tested, not to shame you, but to reveal you. It wasn't about seeing if you would fail. It was about revealing who you really are. And who you are, chosen one, is someone God can trust. That's why the test wasn't flashy. God already knew you could lift your hands in worship when the music swelled. He already saw you proclaim His name when things were going well. But what He wanted to see, what He needed to know, was this: would you still worship when the music stopped? Would you still believe when the breakthrough didn't come? Would you still serve Him when the only response you heard was sense? And you did. You stayed. You stood. You held the line. You obeyed, even in confusion. You chose righteousness when rebellion would have felt easier. You chose love when bitterness seemed justified. You chose humility when pride whispered lies of entitlement. You weren't perfect, but you were faithful. And that's all heaven was looking for. Sometimes we think that to pass a test from God, we need to have it all together. But that's not how the kingdom works. God doesn't look for perfection. He looks for perseverance. He looks for a heart that, even after falling, gets back up. A spirit that cries out, "God, I don't understand, but I still trust you." And that, dear one, was the cry of your heart. That's why you passed. You didn't even know it was a test, and still, you chose God. When others, you stayed. When others doubted, you believed. When others turned inward, you turned heavenward. God has a pattern. He often tests in silence and rewards in public. Remember Joseph. His test wasn't when he stood beside Pharaoh. It was when he was in the pit, in the prison, forgotten, falsely accused. left behind. But God watched him through every quiet act of faithfulness. And when the time came, God lifted him suddenly and publicly. The same is true for you. This season you're walking into is not random. It's not luck. It's not karma. It is the fruit of hidden obedience. Every moment you felt unseen, unnoticed, unappreciated, God saw it. Every hour you kept showing up, even when the enemy whispered, "Why bother?" God heard it. Every time you walked away from compromise, even though no one else would have known if you gave in, God knew. And every single one of those moments became evidence in heaven's court. Chosen one. Heaven has ruled in your favor. God has looked upon your record of private faithfulness and declared, "This one is ready, ready for more, ready for promotion, ready for doors to open, for divine assignments to be released, for influence to expand not for your glory, but for His." This is your unveiling. This is your appointed time. And here is what's so incredible: you didn't strive for it. You didn't manipulate or force your way forward. You simply walked in obedience. And God has decided that now is the time to reward it. And that is why this reward will carry weight. Because it isn't rooted in effort, it's rooted in surrender. It's born from the soil of brokenness, from the waters of tears, from the light of secret faith. You didn't just pass a test. You were proven. Proven as trustworthy, proven as faithful, proven as mature. And now the Lord says, because you have been faithful with little, I will trust you with much. Luke 16:10. The much is coming, but not before the testing. God always tests before promotion, not to disqualify, but to verify. And you, chosen one, have been verified. Understand this: your testimony is not just for your own encouragement. It's going to become a blueprint for others. People will look at you and wonder, how did they get there? How did that happen? And the answer will be simple. I stayed faithful when no one was watching. I passed the test I didn't know I was taking. I kept choosing God in the dark. Your story is about to be told, not just through words, but through the visible evidence of favor. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone will celebrate, but heaven will, and that's what matters most. So if you're still wondering, God, was any of it worth it? Hear this loud and clear: yes, it was. The prayers you prayed, the tears you cried, the things you turned down, the temptations you resisted, the hours of waiting, the months of obedience, the seasons of silence. All of it was the test, and you passed. Without even realizing. Get ready. What comes next is not a test, it's the reward. And it will come in ways you didn't expect, through people you didn't plan for, at times you didn't predict. And it will all lead back to the same truth: God is faithful to those who are faithful to Him. Every unseen act of obedience, every whispered prayer in the dark, every choice you made that nobody acknowledged, heaven saw it all. You may not have realized it, but you've been living before an audience of angels. Not one act of kindness, not one sacrifice, not one spiritual victory has escaped the watchful eye of God. While people were busy chasing the spotlight, you were honoring the sacred. And heaven took note. Psalm 56:8 says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." This is not poetic exaggeration, it is divine reality. God has literally been recording your life, and not just the major milestones, but the moments of faithfulness no one else would ever know. He saw when you said no to bitterness and yes to forgiveness. He saw when you served others even when your heart was breaking. He saw when you worshipped with an empty bank account, a heavy heart, and a fragile hope. You may have thought you were forgotten, that your efforts didn't matter, that your faithfulness wasn't enough. But the truth is your name has echoed in the throne room, and heaven has been preparing a response. Understand this: heaven measures differently than earth. Earth measures success by what can be seen. Heaven measures it by what is hidden. Earth applauds influence. Heaven applauds integrity. And in heaven's book, you are one of the faithful ones. A record has been kept of your struggles, your prayers, your secret obedience, and that record is not forgotten. Consider Job. In the first chapter of his story, a conversation unfolds in heaven between God and Satan. What does God say? Have you considered my servant Job? God highlights Job's righteousness, his character, his faithfulness, not based on what people saw, but what heaven saw. The same is true for you. God brags about the ones who remain loyal in obscurity. He celebrates those who remain pure in secret. He honors those who carry the cross quietly, without needing recognition. There are books in heaven, and your name is written in them, not just the book of life, but the record of the faithful. That record contains moments that may seem ordinary on earth but resound in eternity. Moments like when you stayed late to help someone even though you were exhausted, when you gave your last portion to someone in greater need, when you said no to sin when no one would have known you said yes, when you encouraged someone else while battling your own despair. These are the moments heaven treasures. Hebrews 6:10 affirms this beautifully. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help them. Let those words sink deep. God will not forget. You may forget, others may forget, but God never forgets faithfulness. In fact, there are blessings stored in heaven that are attached to the record of your consistency. There are rewards being prepared, not just spiritual, but tangible. Open doors, divine connections, sudden favor, long-awaited answer, and all of it is rooted not in your striving, but in your steadfastness. Faithfulness has a fragrance in the spiritual realm, and your life has been an offering rising, day by day, into the nostrils of God. You may have felt ordinary, but in heaven, you are marked by faith, marked by perseverance, marked by devotion, and now the record is about to be activated. There is a season in God's timing when what was recorded in the dark is revealed in the light, when what was written in secret is spoken from the mountaintop, when what was preserved is released. Chosen one. That season is drawing near. The testing wasn't just for proof, it was for preparation. The recording wasn't just for memory, it was for reward. You didn't live righteously in vain. You didn't serve quietly for nothing. God saw you. The angels wrote it down. Heaven confirmed it. And now, the shift is coming. The books are about to be opened. The testimony of your secret faith is about to be declared. God is about to honor what you thought no one saw. Because you weren't living for man's applause. You were living for God's approval, and He has already given it. This is why the next season of your life will not be built on hustle. It will be built on harvest. Not because you earned it, but because you endured. Not because you demanded it, but because you trusted. When you walk into the rooms God is opening for you, you won't have to explain how you got there. Because those who know you in the Spirit will recognize this is a reward of hidden obedience. And those who don't will stand in awe, wondering, where did this come from? Let them wonder. Your record is sealed in heaven, and God, in His perfect justice, will see to it that you are honored openly for what you did privately. Chosen one. This is your assurance you have not been forgotten. You have been recorded, and soon you will be revealed. Something is stirring in the atmosphere. You can feel it not with your natural senses, but in your spirit. It's subtle, yet undeniable, like the faint rustling of leaves before a storm, or the first warmth of sunlight before dawn breaks. It's the shift, the divine transition, the long-awaited turning of the page. And chosen one, you are standing on the edge of it. What's coming isn't just a better season. It's a divine repositioning, a sovereign shift birthed from obedience. And it will not be delayed. The winds of change are rising, and they're not chaotic. They're guided. They're not destructive. They're purposeful. God is moving, and He's moving you with Him. For too long, you felt stuck, waiting, watching, wondering if anything was actually changing beneath the surface of your stillness. You've prayed, fasted, obeyed, and endured. And for a while it felt like nothing happened. But here's what you didn't know while you were waiting. God was aligning. Behind the scenes, He was rearranging things that had to move before your breakthrough could arrive. Sometimes, the greatest movements of God are invisible. He doesn't always shake the earth with thunder sometimes. He whispers through the wind. That wind is blowing now, and it carries with it the scent of fulfillment. Isaiah 43:19 declares, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." This is not poetic metaphor for your life. It is prophecy in motion. The wilderness you've wandered, a path is being carved. The dry places you've lived in, living water is on its way. The waiting room you've sat in so long, the door is finally opening. But understand this, the shift is not random. It's the result of the secret test you passed. You didn't manipulate your way forward, you surrendered. You didn't demand your promotion, you served faithfully. And now, the winds of heaven are rising to lift you into your next assignment. But here's the thing about wind, it requires sensitivity. When the Spirit begins to move, those who are spiritually awake feel it first. That uneasiness you've felt lately, that holy restlessness, that strange anticipation. It's not anxiety, it's a signal. Your spirit is picking up what your circumstances haven't revealed yet. God is about to move. Don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it. Prepare for it. What does preparation look like in the Spirit? It looks like releasing old disappointments. It looks like clearing space in your heart for joy again. It looks like loosening your grip on what is no longer aligned with your calling. And above all, it looks like faith that is ready to move when God says move. Remember Abraham. God told him to go to a land he had never seen. There was no map, no clear timeline, just a whisper from heaven and the faith to follow it. That's what made him the father of nations. He moved with the wind. He didn't wait for full clarity, he obeyed in trust. And that's what God is calling you into now. This shift won't look like what you expected. It may come through unlikely people, in unfamiliar territory, with unusual timing, but it will be unmistakably God. And when it comes, you must be ready not to question it, but to walk in it. Don't be surprised if doors suddenly open that had long been closed. Don't be shocked if opportunities appear out of nowhere. Don't second-guess divine appointments simply because they don't match your plan. God's ways are higher. His route rarely follows human logic, but it always fulfills divine purpose. The shift is not just external. It's internal, too. There's a boldness rising in you, a clarity, a new level of discernment. You're starting to see things differently. You're sensing things you used to overlook. You're dreaming again, not just with your mind, but with your spirit. This is all part of the shift. God is aligning your inner world with the new season He's bringing to your outer world. He's not just changing your situation, He's transforming your posture. You are being prepared to handle what you've been praying for. You're not the same person who entered the last season. You're wiser, stronger, deeper, and that growth has qualified you for more. Get ready to be uncomfortable. Shifts stretch us. They unsettle our routines, but don't fear it, embrace it. The discomfort is not chaos, it's calibration. God is adjusting your spiritual settings to match the new coordinates He's sending you to. Some people won't understand the changes in you. They'll try to hold you to the version of you that existed in the old season. Let them go. You don't need permission to obey God. You don't need validation to follow the wind of the Spirit. You were not built to remain. You were designed to move with God. And chosen one, God is on the move. So lift your eyes, dust off the dreams, loosen your grip on what no longer fits, and let the winds of heaven carry you. Because where you're going next is not a random destination, it's the place you've been prepared for all along. There is a divine principle etched into the fabric of heaven. What is done in secret will be rewarded in the open. This isn't wishful thinking. It's the unshakable promise of Jesus Himself. Matthew 6:6 says, "But when you pray, go into your room, close the door and pray to your Father, who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." You've lived this verse. You've labored in the secret place, far from eyes that affirm or mouths that applaud. And now, heaven is declaring it's time for your reward to be revealed. Chosen one. The days of quiet faithfulness are not behind you, but their fruit is now ready to be seen. This is not about pride. It's not about fame. This is about the glory of God manifesting in your life as a witness to His faithfulness and your endurance. Because when God rewards openly, it's not just to honor you, it's to show others what He can do with someone fully yielded, fully surrendered, fully His. There are some blessings God could have released earlier, but He waited. Why? Because the timing of the reward is as important as the reward itself. If God had unveiled you before you were ready, the weight of visibility might have crushed you. But now, after the testing, after the refining, after the season of proving, you're ready not just to receive the reward, but to carry it well. Get ready. People who once overlooked you will begin to wonder what changed. Opportunities that had been withheld will begin to seek you out. Your name will be spoken in rooms you haven't entered. Favor will trace your steps not because of who you are in yourself, but because of what you've become in the secret place. You didn't buy your way into this. You didn't network your way into this. You didn't manipulate, strive, or perform. You simply obeyed, and now, heaven is about to showcase what obedience births. There's a reward that goes beyond material things, though those will come too. There's a reward of influence, of wisdom, of spiritual authority, a reward of divine trust, God entrusting you with greater responsibility, deeper revelation, higher levels of assignment, because you proved that when no one saw, you still served. And now, God is getting ready to put you on display not for performance, but for purpose. This moment is not the finish line, it's the unveiling. The shift from hidden preparation to visible impact. The oil that flowed in private is about to drip in public. And it will be undeniable that you have been with God. Remember David, he was anointed in private long before he was recognized in public. He played the harp in solitude, tended sheep in silence, worshipped with no one watching. But when the time was right, God elevated him from the field to the palace, not because of popularity, but because of purity, not because of status, but because of surrender. The same anointing is flowing toward you now. What others thought was delay was actually God's design to protect what He was growing inside you. The root had to go deep before the fruit could rise high. And now that the root system is strong, the fruit can finally emerge. This reward will confuse some, because it won't make sense to those who measure success by earthly standards. But those who see in the Spirit will recognize the fingerprint of God on your life. They will say, that kind of promotion only comes from the Lord, and they'll be right. Psalm 75, 6-7 reminds us, "For exaltation comes neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but God is the judge. He puts down one and exalts another. He is exalting you not to elevate ego, but to elevate His name. You will be a signpost pointing others to Him, because your story will carry the weight of authenticity. People will see your reward and know this was not luck. This was legacy. This was not chance. This was covenant." And the most powerful part of it all, you'll carry your reward with humility, because the secret place taught you who the reward really belongs to. It's never been about your name in lights. It's been about His name in glory. So when people ask how it happened, what will you say? You'll say, "God saw me when no one else did. God tested me when I didn't know I was being tested. And God rewarded me when I least expected it. I was faithful in the shadows. And now, the light has found me. Let this truth anchor your heart. God never forgets a seed sown in obedience. He never overlooks a heart postured in surrender. And now, after all the quiet labor, your harvest is ready. Chosen one, don't shrink back. Don't apologize for what God is doing. Don't downplay your blessing to make others comfortable. Instead, let your life shine as a testimony, a living, breathing declaration that God is faithful to the faithful. Because when God rewards openly, He doesn't whisper. He announces. He reveals. He celebrates. And now, heaven is about to do just that with your life. You asked for breakthrough. You hoped for answered prayers. You longed for blessing. But what God was preparing you for was greater than provision. It was glory. Because His plan for your life isn't just about improving your comfort. It's about increasing your capacity to carry His presence, to bear the weight of His calling, and to steward heaven's agenda here on earth. Chosen one, you have not simply been waiting, you have been under construction. God has been building something within you that's not fragile, but fortified, not shallow, but rooted, not flashy, but filled with fire. The delay wasn't punishment. It was protection. He wasn't holding something back from you. He was preparing you to hold something greater. Glory isn't light, it's weight. And only those who have been refined by fire can carry it without being crushed. That's why the path has felt heavy. The trials deep, the waiting long, because you weren't being prepared to receive ordinary favor. You were being shaped into someone who could host His presence without leaking under pressure. There is a difference between blessing and glory. Blessing fills your hands. Glory fills your life. Blessing changes circumstances. Glory changed you. Moses understood this. He didn't just ask God for provision in the wilderness, he cried out, "Show me your glory," Exodus 33:18. And in that moment, God hid Moses in the cleft of a rock, covering him with His hand. Why? Because glory requires covering, humility, and surrender. That is what you've learned in the hidden seasons. You've been hidden in the cleft, not ignored but protected, not forgotten but formed. God was not just keeping you from something, He was wrapping His hand around you, preparing you for what most people never experience: intimacy with His glory. This is why others couldn't walk your path, why your testing seemed more intense than others, why your obedience cost you more than it seemed to cost them. Because the call on your life is different. You're not just called to be blessed, you're called to become a carrier of something eternal. And now, the fire you've walked through is beginning to reveal something unshakable. The pressure has created purity. The storms have produced stability. The warfare has birthed wisdom. You are emerging not just with a testimony, but with a mantle. Not just with favor, but with fire. People will look at you and think, they're blessed. But what they won't see is that you've been burned and refined. You've been crushed and still chose to worship. You've been misunderstood and still chose love. You've been emptied, only to be filled again not with your own strength, but with God's Spirit. Isaiah 61:3 speaks of those who receive a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. That exchange has happened in you. Where you once had ashes, now beauty. Where mourning broke you, now oil flows. Where despair lingered, now praise rises. This is the evidence of someone who has passed through fire and come out carrying glory. The enemy tried to stop it. He attacked your confidence. He targeted your relationships. He tried to drown your purpose in exhaustion and confusion. But he failed, because what God placed inside of you, he could not touch. You are now standing on the other side of testing. And what's left is not weakness. What's left is weight, the spiritual kind. The kind that commands authority in the spirit realm. The kind that shifts atmospheres when you pray. The kind that breaks chains when you speak. The kind that invites heaven to earth when you worship. You are no longer just praying for God to use you. You are now positioned to be poured out. This is why you couldn't afford to give up. Why heaven wouldn't let you quit. Why you were held steady when you felt like walking away. Because what you carry is not common. You carry weight. You carry wisdom. You carry oil. This is not the kind of reward that fades. This is eternal weight, forged in secret, now ready for public release. And here's the most beautiful part. You don't even look like what you've been through. The fire didn't burn you, it branded you. The storm didn't destroy you, it deepened you. The test didn't disqualify you, it entrusted you. Now you are ready, not for applause, not for fame, but for impact, for glory, for legacy. You've been prepared to walk in rooms where your presence carries more than words. You've been assigned to atmospheres that need what you've been cultivating in since. You are not stepping into this next season empty-handed. You are stepping in full of fire and favor, full of grace and truth, full of the Spirit and authority. This is not just elevation, it is activation. What was dormant is awakening. What was hidden is rising. What was internal is about to overflow. So lift your head. Chosen one, you're not just about to be blessed, you're about to be entrusted with glory. It is here, not someday, not eventually, now. The season you were molded for, the moment every tear, every test, every private act of faithfulness was preparing you for, has arrived. This is not a temporary lift or emotional encouragement. This is a divine elevation, and it is heaven ordained. The King has spoken, reward my servant. And when heaven decrees a thing, no force on earth can block it. Your lifting isn't about human approval. It's not a result of personal striving. It is the sovereign response of God to your consistent surrender. This is your moment to rise not above others, but above everything that tried to keep you buried. You are rising above fear, rising above discouragement, rising above the weight of past failures and whispered lies, not because you willed it, but because God commanded it. Psalm 3:3 says, "But you, O Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, and the one who lifts my head." God himself is lifting your head. He's raising your perspective. He's shifting your focus from weariness to wonder, from striving to soaring, from survival to significance. You have not come this far to plateau. You are being called higher, into new places of impact, new levels of influence, new dimensions of spiritual authority. And you will not go alone. The same God who formed you in secret is walking with you into the spotlight, not for your glory, but for His. This is the hour of fulfillment. The seeds you sowed in tears now being reaped in joy. The prayers you whispered with trembling lips now being answered with thunder. The obedience you chose when it hurt most, now producing a harvest that will touch generations. God is not just blessing you, He's positioning you. He's making your life a stage for His glory. People will see what He's done in you and be drawn to the one who did it. Your testimony will be a living altar, pointing others to His faithfulness. People do it. But this new elevation also comes with new responsibility. You are not being raised to relax, you are being raised to reign, not in worldly power, but in kingdom authority. Your words will carry weight, your prayers will carry breakthrough, your presence will carry peace, because you are not just a believer, you are a chosen one. You've been through the furnace, and now you shine with the fire of heaven. You've carried the cross in secret, and now you walk with the crown of favor, not because you demanded it, but because you endured. Let this truth steady you. You are not stepping into this season by accident. Every detail has been arranged, every door timed to open, every connection orchestrated, every opportunity aligned. This is God's design, unfolding at God's pace, in God's way. He is trusting you with more, not because you're perfect, but because you're faithful. Because when others bowed to pressure, you bent your knee to prayer. When others craved attention, you craved His presence. And now, heaven is answering with the honor reserved for those who sought first His kingdom. You didn't push your way forward, you waited. You didn't force the door, you knocked and trusted. You didn't abandon the process, you let it shape you. And now that you are shaped, He is sending you, like Joseph rising from prison to palace, like Esther stepping into the throne room for such a time as this, like David being called in from the fields to be crowned king. You have been called out of hiding. God is saying, now show the world what I've been doing in you. But even now, as He lifts you, keep your posture low. Stay humble, stay worshipful, stay dependent, because your strength was never in your strategy. It was always in your surrender. And the same surrender that brought the lifting will be the surrender that sustains it. This reward isn't fleeting. This favor won't fade. Because it's not built on hype, it's built on holiness. It's not the result of performance, it's the outcome of purpose. And you are stepping fully into that purpose now. So walk boldly, chosen one. Not arrogantly, but confidently. Let praise be your armor. Let worship be your compass. Let the word be your foundation. Because the path ahead isn't just for you, it's for those following after you. You are a forerunner, a living sign that God sees, rewards, and elevates those who are faithful in secret. And now, it is time to speak what was once whispered, time to declare what was once buried. Time to shine not with your own light, but with His glory upon you. As Isaiah 61 proclaims, arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. This is your rising, this is your lifting, this is your reward, and it has your name on it.